Welcome to the podcast. It's a Wednesday. I'm Chris Graham, joined by Rod Mullins. We'll talk some NASCAR later in this podcast as the Cup Series gets ready to, and in fact, they're already heading to or there in Mexico City for the weekend. But we'll talk some NHRA first. Big drag weekend down and in Bristol. Rod was there for it, and we're not even going to start with the results. Rod, we have a story about Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
I understand, Rod, that he got smacked in the face by a reporter. Is that true?
No, it's not
Oh, it's
true,
not true?
but they assume that instantly because it goes out on X, it's got to be true, or so any kind of social media, it's got to be true. All of this is just crazy from the weekend. I had a great weekend down at Bristol. Saturday had a chance. Tony Stewart had beat out uh, Doug Coletta in a race in the too tasty challenge that they have, the Mission Foods people have. And he beat him out for the first time. They've been actually trying to beat him for a long time, and he was coming across or coming after a big performance up in Epping, up in New Hampshire. And a lot of people were saying, Tony Stewart's found his groove. Well, he has. And they had him in there on Saturday as he had beaten Coletta there in that challenge, and he was addressing some things to the media and talking to us. And I was recording him on video and everything, and we had a reporter that actually sat beside of me most of the weekend and everything. Great person, just overall wonderful person to be around, talking about things. And all of a sudden, she asked him a question about something about Chicago, and the question was, it just suddenly escalated and went to another level. And he kind of told her, he said, uh, if you wouldn't make this shit up, is the way he put it to her during the press conference. And I have to say it that way. That's what he said. And a lot of people would say, oh, that's Tony Stewart being smart and sarcastic again. And the conversation, you have to watch it, you have to see it a little bit, but you see this little wry kind of smile coming out of Tony Stewart there, and he's kind of like, I'm up to mischief is what I'm up to. I'm just stirring the pot is what I'm going to do. And after they finished with the press conference, they stepped outside and they were talking a little bit more. And during that entire time, they were just talking about things. She's known him for 20 or 30 years, and they were talking about things. So that leads us into Sunday. And you're going to ask me the question of what happened on Sunday, I'm sure.
Well, it was her name is Susan Wade, right?
Right. Susan Wade. Yeah.
Susan Wade, and
And
so okay, so what you're telling me is, and I'm shocked to hear this, that something that was out on Twitter was wrong. But so I'm guessing, you guys went to actually track him down, to I don't, I guess to prove that he didn't smack him in the face.
yeah, the big thing was we went to find him. One, Susan was going to do, I kind of put Susan up to it and told her, I said, you need to find Tony. You need to go and take a hold of him and look and see which side was it that you supposedly hit him on, and see if he's still red or showing any kind of swelling or anything from the smack that you put on his face. And I think she primarily went up to him and said, I need to look at you right quick. Which side of the face did I strike you on? And he just all of a sudden he said, "Oh God." She said, "Yeah, this is gotten started and everything. The little rumor had gotten started that I supposedly smacked you." And he says, "You know how it goes. You know how it goes. Just take it or leave it. Just take it one way or the other," is the way he was. And he was all fun about the whole thing, but he was like, doesn't surprise me. And it got back to this thing of where I did the article on what I feel is becoming more and more popular in the sports world. And we've talked about it before, and that's clickbaiting, getting people to click on a story that absolutely has nothing to do with what has been teased to you in either a tweet or anything like that, and then coming to find out it's totally erroneous. There's nothing true to it. Some cases there might be some truth to it, but in this case, definitely wrong that weekend.
Okay, so I don't know that you were able to do this, but I mean, where did the rumor come from? I mean, it was on Twitter, but did you find like the tweet, the smoking gun tweet, and then whoever it was in the reporting side of things that blew it up out of proportion?
No, we never did. We never did. It actually disappeared about not long after one of her photographers that had went with her said, "You're the talk of, you're the talk of some of the photographers and the media people." And nobody else had heard it up in the media center where we were at. Nobody had heard that. And he came to her and he told her, he says, he says, "Yeah," I said, "You supposedly smacked Tony Stewart." And it's like, "No, you're kidding me." And he's like, "No, I'm not kidding you at all." And yeah, Susan went on a mission, buddy. At that point, she went on a mission, and she was not about to be, leveraged into this situation that never existed in the first place. All she was having was just a good conversation with Tony Stewart. And it proved to me out of this whole thing, this was the first real time I got to talk to Tony Stewart. And when I talked to him, more than anything else, I think it established, especially in my article I wrote it, Tony Stewart's a human being. He's like every one of us. Now, when you say no, he's not like every one of us, yes, he is, because he's out there doing what he loves every weekend or every day, trying to improve his team. He's trying to make some money off of it. He's trying to pay the bills like every one of us is trying to do, pay the bills and still keep your head above water and everything. And that's what he's trying to do. But people fall short with this and they want to look at the bad side of things. They want to look at, "Oh, you didn't stay with NASCAR, you left, and this is what you've done." The surprising thing that came out of this story with Tony Stewart and the clickbait thing is that I came away with a newfound respect for him because he could not stop talking about Mike Helton. And Mike Helton used to be big with NASCAR. I think he still has a role with the organization, but he out and out just came out and said during the course of the conversation in the press conference that as far as he was concerned, Mike Helton ought to be the one in charge of running things as the quote unquote commissioner of NASCAR, but we won't see that. I don't know why. If it's something that he just doesn't want to do, don't know what the situation is, but he is the same person that kind of pulled Tony back and kind of mentored him, so to speak. It's like he would tell Tony, he would say to you, "Tony, I know you see things this way. I know what you're telling. You're right about this, but we need to approach this from a different direction." And that usually diffused Tony in a lot of situations. And he's not had that except, just talking among people. And I guess his wife, I guess Leah Pruitt right now probably is that Mike Helton type figure with him because, there was the big talk over the weekend of whether or not he was going to go and relinquish control of the car back to Leah now that she's had their child, Dominic. And he says, whenever she wants to come back to the car, it's hers. But he says, right now I'm having fun and she's happy with the way things are. And that's the way we're going to stick with him. So it just proved to me he's just an everyday kind of guy, just the same way that you and I are. Just, he's facing decisions. He's got to go to his wife occasionally and find out and say, "Hey, how do I approach this? How do I do this?" And he's kind of feeling his way through the whole thing of life the same way that we're doing.
That's something I'll reinforce here. I've had I'm 30 years into journalism. I don't think I feel that old, but I've interviewed presidential candidates,
Hmm.
U.S. senators, governors, powerful football coaches and basketball coaches, and big time. I shouldn't say powerful, big time. ACC and SEC coaches, and
Hmm.
everyone, I mean, I've learned after all those experiences not to just, base your opinion of somebody on what you see on TV or what you see in a
Right.
particular interview because, I mean, just like you said, I mean, everybody that I've interviewed is just a regular guy or gal. I mean, they might be famous, they might be rich and whatever, but at the end of the day, they put their pants on one leg at a time like we do. So,
Yep.
um, but that's just something that gets reinforced. So, I really try to go out of my way. I mean, I'm guilty as everybody else probably of well, look at that jerk on the TV. But for the
Mhm.
most part, everybody I've interviewed is a real person, and they're just like us. So I'm glad that you had that experience. Though that seems like a really neat. I mean, what a
Well,
interesting story to be in the middle of.
Yeah, and you have been a part of the wrestling world too, and that's the other thing too. We look at these things. I was going through clips the other night of when there was a wrestler had went and smacked the host of one of the old TV shows upside of the face and stuff because he kept on saying the loser, you all were the losers of this match, so forth, and the guy just didn't like it. He smacked him upside of the face. And everybody started saying, what a jerk, what a jerk to be this way. But you've had a chance. Jim Cornette, I think, is one of them that you've had a chance to talk to, or at least be around and see some things. These people are. It's a facade. It's an image that they have to portray out there. It's sort of like being in a play, a movie, or a television show. This is who they are when they're on screen, but when they're off screen, completely different person.
I think, and so you talk about wrestlers being that way. I think, I
Mhm.
mean, to some degree, I'm not, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but politicians or NASCAR drivers or
Yep,
football coaches, same thing. When you're in front of a camera and there's microphones in your face and there's lights everywhere and, people are asking you questions, you're one person because, you gotta, kind of portray an image. And then when the cameras go off, you're just a guy or a gal. And so
that's right.
the wrestlers, yeah, we can see it most with the wrestlers, but yeah, it's the same way for everybody. So what a neat experience
Yep,
for you.
yeah, it was
Okay,
neat.
let's talk now about what you were there for, which was to cover the NHRA. Give us some of the highlights from the weekend.
Well, what we saw from the NHRA this past weekend, we saw changing track conditions all the way around on Friday and Saturday. We saw rain showers at different times. Part of the qualifying rounds got rained out on Friday. It was just one round, though, and it was one of the, I think it was Top Fuel. I'm not sure if it's Top Fuel or Pro Stock, but one of them got rained out. And so they really pretty much set everything the way it was, had already taken place for the day. And we went into Saturday, and then they got together and had the missions food challenge that they have, and that's some according to the higher brackets where they finished in the first round of qualifying. And like I mentioned earlier, Tony Stewart came out, and he came out on top, defeated Doug Coletta, and was really looking good going into Sunday, but then it all kind of fell apart for him. He didn't have enough. His car just didn't have enough to hold up there toward the end of it, especially in the final round of qualifying. But we saw some firsts. Greg Anderson, who's in the Pro Stock Series, Greg Anderson picked up his 1000th and his 1001, sort of like series in the competition thing of the brackets. Picked up his 1001 win, and that's amazing. And his first one, ironically, was at Bristol back in, I think, 2003 is when I think it took place, 2001 or 2003. And Greg Anderson was just talking about that, and just tremendous feeling that he had that a lot of this had taken place at Bristol. And then we had some things that happened over the weekend too. Ron Capps, who had been winless since I think '03. He had won world championship that year in 2003, but went winless last year. Finally picked up a win, his eighth overall. He now has moved up with John Force in the most wins at Bristol. And Ron Capps was just, oh, he was just a completely different person. He was just, he said, it's kind of nice to get the monkey off our back. We've been here the whole time, and this whole thing, the season. But he says we didn't run that well starting at the beginning at Bristol, but then we came to life, and we did when we had to. We came to life like we were supposed to. And then one other that really got me too was Steve Torrance. We talk about these guys that we kind of have an issue with, and maybe at times you've seen them on TV. One thing that's kind of, I guess, hindered me a little bit in how I've reported a little bit has been Steve Torrance. I saw a couple of years ago Steve Torrance strike a fellow racer competitor across the face, smacked him across the face like it was in a wrestling match, and they got into a big fight. And I really didn't have a lot of respect for him. Now it seems like he's kind of grown up. And I mean, he's old, he's older in the sport and so forth. He's been in it a long time, but they had been in a situation too, much like Ron Capps. They had not been doing too well. And they come to Bristol and they get there, and the conditions, although changing, and we got late into the evening, due to a little delay, a couple of times of some delays, he managed to pull off a win in the Top Fuel Dragster, and so that was the one that kind of went on past Tony Stewart, and he went on for the championship. So altogether, you had Ron Capps, Greg Anderson. You also had Steve Torrance in there as well, and then in the motorcycle, pro stock motorcycle, Richard Gadsden. A great young man. Just, I mean, all together, just the whole thing, the whole package together of a racer. Been looking for his first win ever. And he went out there on Sunday afternoon and defeated Gage Herrera and managed to pull off a, wow, 196.30 mile per hour run past Gage Herrera to win in pro stock motorcycle. It was just a fun weekend altogether. It just great all the way around.
What's the attendance like at this event? I have no idea, and I don't know that the TV cameras pick it up so well.
Yeah, the attendance this time around, let's put it this way. I have seen the crowd, or at least the stands full before. I've seen them packed. I think there was it was down this year. I think it was down, but I think a lot of it may have been because of the fact some people might have been unsure about how the weather was going to be. That could have been part of it. We're back to our same thing too: prices, how much it costs. But people tend to forget too that once you get admission into a NHRA event, you have the whole gambit. You just don't go to the stands and sit. You go down into the garage area. You get to go down there and meet the drivers. You have to stay at the distance from them, but that's solely something that NASCAR doesn't allow you to do unless you have one of those special passes that gets you down into the pits. And it's a totally different experience. And I just brag on this every time that we've talked about NHRA. NHRA gives the fans exactly what they're looking for, and that is they put the driver and they put the team right there in front of them. And usually it's so fun because they're there and they may be sitting there eating because they have to take everything on the road with them. And who knows, John Force might be the type of person in the past, if you were there and stuff, want a hamburger? Let me fry you up a hamburger real quick and stuff. And they'd go and they might get a kid a hamburger, or they might do something like that for them. That's just how, it's just so neat of how they all get together, and it kind of meshes together, especially on that race weekend.
It sounds like maybe that's just the drag racing sport in general. It just what you said
Hmm.
there sounds so much like my memories of. I spent a lot of Sundays in my childhood at the local drag strip because I had family members who raced there in the various classes. And yeah, I mean, you could just walk around the pits. That's what I did all the time. Walk around the
Hmm.
pits. Yeah, there was concession stand with food, but I mean, you could go up to anybody. You could go up to the
Yeah.
guys. So many of the guys were fixing their own car before they got in and raced it. I mean, it was just a really neat
Yeah.
experience. Very hands-on. I mean, imagine going to a Major League Baseball game and sitting in the dugout. That's what it's kind of like.
Yeah. Well, the big surprise this weekend, they'd been talking about it all the way up through the season, and that had been Austin Prock and Jack Beckman, who had been with John Force Racing, and of course, Brittany Force in there as well. They did not have a good showing whatsoever. As a matter of fact, Austin Prock and Jack Beckman go out in the first rounds, which was totally unheard of. And Austin Prock's already won, I don't know how many Wallies already this season, and has won a bunch last year after taking over from John Force once that he put him in a car into the funny car mode. And then Jack Beckman had to step in this past year, subbing for John Force. Looks like he's going to be there for a while. John Force was not at the racetrack this weekend. He may have been there on Friday. I'm not sure. I'd heard somebody say that thought they saw him on Friday, but he was tending to some things back home where he was at, and so we didn't get to see him this weekend. I'm sure if we had, we would have heard him. We would have heard him because that's just the way John Force is. He's just he lets you know when he's in the room. He tells everybody what's going on, and yes, he's recovering nicely. He looks good from all indications and people I've talked to, but still he's got a long way to go. Don't know if he'll ever get back into the car or not, but I know some fans would love to see him back in it. But considering the way that wreck happened and so forth that we were talking about last year, gosh, it's a miracle that he walked away from it.
All right, let's switch gears. Great update on things going on down at Bristol Dragway. Let's turn our attention to NASCAR. And okay, so I understand Denny Hamlin is on baby watch, and so he's not going to be in Mexico City this weekend. So at
Right.
least he gave himself a nice send off with his win at Michigan this past weekend. Take us into what happened at Michigan and how Denny Hamlin did it.
Well, I think what Denny Hamlin used was one thing that I always talk about at Michigan, and that is exceptional fuel mileage and management of fuel. That's what got him the win, and being able to keep his composure under pressure the way that he needed to, especially on that 2 mile oval. It marked his 57th win overall, his third of the season. He's having a great year so far, but when he was asked about whether or not he was worried about running out of gas, he said, "No, not really. I just wanted to get the lead." And, William Byron was there and he was doing a really good job of defending. But, that sounds kind of modest for Denny Hamlin. When Denny Hamlin got out of the car, the first thing he did when he got to the microphone was, "I'm sorry, Dad, but I just beat your favorite driver again." And the crowd just erupted in boos and all these other things. So Denny Hamlin's trying really hard to play that bad guy of the sport a little bit more. And I know there's going to be people that's going to compare him to, say, "Oh, he's not even on the same food chain as Dale Earnhardt." Well, he's not, but he's definitely putting some emotion into this whole thing about the way people are reacting to him when he comes out in his sarcasm. Now, Tony Stewart probably would have done the same thing. What did Tony Stewart say to Carl Edwards one year for the championship down at Homestead? He said, "I'd wreck my own mother. I'd wreck my own grandmother," is what he would do. And that sounded so cruel, but Tony Stewart would do anything he could in order to win a championship. And the same way with all these drivers. We may be seeing Denny Hamlin right now starting to come together and maybe peak at not the right time here during the summer, but peak right before going into the playoffs. And if he goes into the playoffs hot, then there may be no stopping him this year for a title. He could pull off a title this year, but we'll just have to wait and see. They've had a lot of bad things happen to him over the years, and Denny Hamlin's had some things happen as well, and driving, getting wrecked, and so forth, knocking him out of the points. Ross Chastain, who he disdains to this day over the move that he made at Martinsville and so forth. Yeah, it's going to have a lot of these pieces are going to have to come together in order for Denny to be able to pull off a championship this year.
Okay, from a marketing standpoint, I'll bring this up about Denny Hamlin playing the heel. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
wrestling a few minutes ago, so in that context, um, in wrestling, there's this weird thing, and it dates back to the '80s, where fans actually there are a lot of fans who will root for the bad guys. As
Mm-hmm.
long as the bad guys acknowledge that they're bad guys. I mean, I was just watching a video last night of a 1980s wrestling TV show, and Ric Flair was talking, and Ric Flair was the quintessential heel of the '80s, and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking trash on Dusty Rhodes, his big rival at the time, and the babyface favorite of so many people. And Ric Flair was getting cheers as he was talking about Dusty Rhodes, and it just reminded me that, all right, so if you're Denny Hamlin and you're out there complaining that people don't like you, they'll like you, they'll hate you even more, because
Yeah.
you're just a whiny baby. But if you're out there and the first thing you say is, "I'm sorry I beat your favorite driver," there are some people who will say, "You know what? I respect that. I actually kind of like
Mm-hmm.
that guy for leaning into it and being the heel." And so, there might be something there. I like it. I think that's great. Acknowledge that, hey, yeah, for whatever reason it is, people don't like me. So whatever, I won. You don't have to like that either. And so I think that's neat. I think that's smart on Denny Hamlin's part just to lean into it like that.
Yeah, and he's not the only one right now that's being leaned on by some of the fans. And I've got to say this: there's people right now leaning on Alex Bowman, and they're like, get rid of him. Telling Rick Hendrick, get rid of him. Put Carson Hocevar in the car for next year. Get him in there. Get somebody in there that can win. You never know when Alex Bowman's going to just suddenly surprise you and win a race like he did at Chicago last year. A lot of people just take it for granted that they say he's not that good of a driver, but when you have wrecks happen, I think he only made it through something like 3 or 4 laps or something into the beginning of the race, and then he gets taken out. Things just don't go your way. Things just don't go your way. That's all you could say about it. But Alex Bowman is part of the reason right now. That's one of the things that they're falling on with him. And then Chase Elliott, of all people, there are people that are calling for Chase Elliott's crew chief's head, Alan Gustafson. They're wanting him out of there, put somebody else in there in order for them to, give Chase a chance at winning some races. Although he's in the thick of the playoff picture right now, still the fans want him to be winning races. And that's the same way I think wrestling is too. They always want somebody to whip up on somebody, and hey, we can brag about it for another week, or we can brag about it for another month until the big show happens again. And then when that happens and he loses, start all over again. Let's get this thing going. Or they make you mad enough to where I'm not going to support him again, but then eventually you'll come back to him. That's just the way it is. It's a love-hate relationship. It's almost like high school romance is what it is. I mean, you go from you date this girl, you go and you date her for a little while, she dumps you, and then she begs you back, and then you're stupid enough to go back to her. It's kind of like that whole thing is what it reminds me of.
I want to bring up something too. You said there about fans talking about Alex Bowman not being a good driver. I think about this too when you think about like baseball players or football players who are sort of on the margins, and Alex Bowman's not on the margins, but oh, this guy's not a good, he's not a good Major League Baseball player. This guy's a terrible NFL quarterback or whatever else.
Mhm.
Man, to get to that level, you got to be you're among like a very elite group of people to get to that level. So don't say they're not good. They're just not good among like the 36 or 40 or whatever it is NASCAR Cup Series drivers.
Right.
Um, it's because comparing their skill to your skill driving to the grocery store is not
Mhm.
even close. Just
Right.
like the worst baseball player in Major League Baseball would cream anything you threw at him and knock it right
Mhm.
down your throat if he didn't hit it 400 feet on the first swing. So I mean, just give it a break. These guys are pretty good at what they do.
Let's compare it here. And everybody talks about some of the greats. Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth. How many home runs did he hit? How many times did he strike out? The
Yeah,
strikeouts were more so than what he hit of home runs. I mean, that's a
yeah,
glaring
yeah.
difference right there in the whole thing. And then one that I'm kind of familiar with right now is Baker Mayfield. I really wish people would leave Baker Mayfield alone and let him go do what he is capable of doing. And that Tampa Bay, I wasn't a fan when they first drafted him and got him in Cleveland and stuff, but they treated him so bad at Cleveland. Then they got him to Carolina, got rid of him at Carolina. Then they move him to the Rams, and he starts showing a little bit of some promise there. But then the Bucks grab him up, and when the Bucks grab him up, he has put up some of the most phenomenal numbers for a quarterback. But everybody says, yeah, just wait till he falls. Just wait till something falls apart with him. And it's like, we're not talking Cleveland here. We're not talking, the Carolina Panthers. We're talking, this is Baker Mayfield. The same way that people would look at and say, oh, we expected big things out of Jameis Winston. We never got anything out of Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay. And he was supposed to be this ultra great quarterback. Mayfield was great in Oklahoma when he was playing for the Sooners and everything. But when he went to the pros, hey, I think we can both say there's a learning curve there. There's a learning curve. Some people can step right into it and go, and some people can just do wonders with it. But didn't it take Tom Brady just a little while to start getting into the sync of things, into what kind of quarterback he finally ended up becoming?
Well, I mean, Baker Mayfield won at Cleveland, and the one year
Yeah,
he did not win was a year he played with two banged up shoulders. It's kind of hard to throw a
right.
football if you got, I mean, one banged up shoulder. If it's your left shoulder, you still the torque. But if you
Hmm.
got two banged up shoulders and you're still out there playing, that says you're a gamer. I mean, you could just
Yeah.
sit on the bench and collect your paycheck and let the other guy play, but he wanted to go out there and play. So, no, I've liked Baker Mayfield ever since that year, the Hard Knocks season that they did with the Cleveland Browns.
Hmm.
Whether they made him look good or he just naturally looked good, he looked like a guy. He was a rookie. I guess he'd been drafted that year. They did the hard.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
they were coming off that 0-16 or 1-31 stretch that they had, and he didn't go into camp that year as a guy that was going to start. I mean, they
Hmm.
drafted him high, but they were going to baby him, like they should, and he
Hmm.
went out there and won them over. And so, an undersized guy who, if I remember right, he ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, but he wasn't very heavily
Hmm.
recruited when he came out of high school because of his size, smaller guy. Yeah, admire the guy. I admire the guy, and I know Tampa Bay's your team, and he's, sometimes you can love your quarterback or hate your quarterback. I love your
Hmm.
quarterback. He's
Yeah.
a guy that you can win games with.
Yeah, I like him really well, and I like him for the grittiness and being able to play the same way that I like some of these drivers in NASCAR too. Switching it back, I like Carson Hocevar right now. Carson Hocevar has this unique approach. I mean, he's running right now with his foot to the floor and he's looking for every opportunity. And he was headed for a top 10 finish again. He finished second, I think, the week before in a race, finished second or third, or was going to, and then was going to finish top 10 this race, runs out of fuel. These are little rookie mistakes, or these are things that happen to drivers, even the best of drivers. These things happen when they run out of fuel. They are the ones that are driving the car. They're not the ones that's putting the gas into the car like we do when we go to the convenience store and we put enough gas in it to get us where we're going. They have to depend on the guy, the gas man, and he's got to make sure that's hooked up and that's connected in there to get every bit of that gas and that fuel in there. And if they go and they want to stretch it, that's the little bit of the crew chief's issue. That's not the driver's part. So let's place blame where it needs to go in a certain way, but folks tend to forget that they just want to blame the person instead of, hey, let's look at the crew chief, let's look at the crew itself for doing that. But it all ultimately falls back on the driver.
Just like a quarterback in football, if it's the left guard that didn't block somebody, the quarterback is playing for getting sacked or throwing the interception. So,
Right.
all right, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, the only thing I know about Mexico City is what I said earlier, that Denny Hamlin will not be there this weekend because he's on baby watch.
Right.
What else do we need to know about this race this weekend?
Well, this is like a road course race. This is going to be 250. It's going to be called the 250 lapper, I think is what it's supposed to be. I'm trying to get in here and pull my notes up real quick because, yeah, to me, this is a little bit of a new one too. I mean, I've heard about, Autodromo down in Mexico. Daniel Suarez talks about this track being so good. Let me give you a little bit about it. It's a 2.42-mile asphalt paved road course. This is the first road course they're going to be going to since they've probably been at Circuit of the Americas. And so they're going to this one. It's going to start at 3 p.m. Now, get this, this is going to be a $12 million purse for the drivers. That's some good money right there. That's some, pretty good money along the lines of maybe some of the other big events that they have to deal with. But they'll go 242 miles. They'll go 100 laps, and then stage one will end on lap 20. So that's how big this course is. And then stage two will end on lap 45. So it's only like a 25 lap difference right there. And then the final stage will end on lap 100. So that's the way they're going to be going in this. The Xfinity Series is going to be racing there. The Chilango 150, they're going to be racing the road course on Saturday. And then, of course, on Sunday, the big race will take place at 3 o'clock. Now, just to give you some of the storylines that's kind of going with this, first of all, this is the first NASCAR Cup Series event that's being held south of the border in Mexico and the third held outside the continental U.S. The other two, they were Canada. One's been in Montreal. I think one or two have been in Montreal before. Mexico City is the first NASCAR Cup Series point paying race held outside the continental U.S. since 1958 when the Cup Series first ran at Toronto. Mexico City is the 13th track added to the Cup schedule in this millennium. The question is whether they'll be there on the schedule next year because we have had a lot of stuff going on back and forth of saying this is just a one-time deal. I don't think it's a one-time deal, but stranger things have happened. We're just going to find out. There's talk that it may be a one-time deal. There's all these things, the fears of things about Mexico and different things that's going through their head. This is something funny too. The way I understand this, NASCAR or at least Kyle Busch, can't run anything with tobacco or any kind of I don't know. It's he was running some stuff on there at one time. No gambling. There's some things he can't run on his car on Sunday. So the impression that we've been given is he's going to have a blank car with maybe cheddars on the side of it. It's all he's going to have on it. So there's going to be some things that's going to be regulated. How it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to say Daniel Suarez probably has an advantage with this because he's drove this track before, but it's what kind of car is going to be put underneath Daniel Suarez with Trackhouse Racing. Shane Van Gisbergen, he might have a good chance at this race too, because this is the kind of road course that he is used to, especially with what he has driven in supercars before. But, I just wouldn't rule it out with somebody else, kind of being the fly in the ointment, kind of spoiling all this. Hey, if they have a good day, and I'm back on that pedestal again here talking about it, if Kyle Busch has a good day, Kyle Busch could very well pull off a win with this one. And Kyle Busch has been inching up. He's right now on the breaking point, the borderline on if the playoffs were held today, he'd be on the tiebreaker side, so to speak, because there's two drivers pretty much tied there at 15th or 16th that have 0 points to the good. So here they are. They're kind of like in a thing. He needs this for a win. If he gets this win, that could put him into the thick of things coming up for the rest of the season. It also give him a push going into the rest of the 2005 season or 2025 season that could be very helpful for Richard Childress Racing. So it's anybody's race pretty much this coming weekend. I wouldn't be surprised to see probably a Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace maybe included in there as well. Bubba Wallace running good again as he did this past weekend at Michigan. So it's anybody's race pretty much as we're up in the air.
Sunday at 3 o'clock, right? And this is another one on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
On Amazon Prime. So, well, we'll look forward to Rod's coverage, of course, of the racing weekend, and then we'll look forward to talking again next week. Hey, Rod, as always, thank you for your time and your insight.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.